Mr. Bison Flips!
Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips! Mr. Bison Flips!
Good morning, Year 12. I'm here again today to give you another piece of advice in terms of how to put your written assignment together. You know how your draft is due when you come back after the Christmas break, and I just wanted to make sure that you all had the information you needed to complete that draft to a high standard, so that I'm giving you feedback on your very, very best work. Because I can only give you feedback once, and it won't be written feedback, it'll be verbal feedback. And so I really want to be giving you that feedback on your very best piece of work and not some shoddy effort that you've had to toss together in the last minute. So just to make sure that you're on the right track from the start, here are a few pointers. So I'm going to structure this speech around 4 different components, because there are 4 components that you need to submit as one PDF document on the day. There needs to be a cover page that outlines the scope of the work. There needs to be a reflection statement, which is what you've written in response to the interactive oral on that particular work on which you base your essay. And then obviously the essay itself, the 1,500 words, and then at the end a works cited bibliography of any piece of information that appears within the text of the essay. If we start by looking at the cover page for the essay, it needs to have these components. This is not a dictated IB structure, but to me this is a kind of a logical setup of it. But as long as you've got all this information on the page, it doesn't really matter how the layout is set up. You need to identify that this is a language A essay in literature, and obviously your subject is English. It's the written assignment for literature in translation part 1. You need to have some form of a title. It could be a research question, or you might paraphrase that question as a statement if you prefer. It's up to you what shape that takes. Then you will identify the title and the author, and in brackets probably the translator of that particular work as well. And then the 2 word counts, the word count for the reflection statement and the word count for the essay itself. And make sure you remain within those parameters of 300 to 400 words for the reflection and 12 to 1,500 words for the essay. You then have your work, your own name, your session number, this year's date, and obviously your school name. So just to comment on the word count as such, the essay is 1,500 words, no more, 12 to 1,500 words, and that includes any quotations from the work, your primary text that you're including as evidence. However, it excludes reference material. So if you're writing Lorca page 45 or Lorca page 48 or Siskin page 30, that's not counted, the actual references to the author and the page, and neither is the bibliography. But anything else is counted in the 1,500 words. What's really important here is to make sure, this is straight from the subject report from last November, make sure the candidates know that even 1 word over the limit in the reflective or the essay will cost you marks. So just don't, right? If you need to chop words out, do so before you hand it in. So make sure you use the annotated examples that I've given you on Schoology for the reflection statement, and remember to focus that on the question set for the interactive oral. If you haven't watched my separate video on how to set up your reflection statement, you might want to do that as well, just to make sure that you're doing the right things. In fact, I might give you a few more pointers about the reflection, just to make sure that we're on the right. First of all, the focus of the reflection itself, and again, I'm now citing the subject report from a year ago. This material can include facts about the writer, or it can include the religious, political, geographical, historical context in which the work was constructed. It may also be necessary to address contextual matters within the work. For instance, we'll see that in Siskin, it's important to talk about the Enlightenment and why that setting was chosen. And potentially placing the work in literary history in terms of its importance and how it shaped other work, or how it was shaped by other works at the time, and the way it was received by its audience. That's all good. However, you don't want to do these things in red. This is what schools do that underperform with the reflection statement. You don't want to focus on the text itself, and you don't want to evaluate or discuss the performance of other peers in terms of, oh, X said such and such and Y said such and such during the oral, but rather focus on what you actually learned about the contextual considerations of the work. So really what the subject report is saying here is those candidates who pick up 2 to 3 major factors of the context and culture and reveal that they've understood both the facts and the implications for the text they're the ones who will achieve full marks of 3 in the stage, in that criterion A. So moving on now to the actual essay, what's really important is that you mustn't exceed the word count. We talked about that before, and if you have a look at the marking criteria sheet, you'll see exactly what penalties are applied if you don't adhere to the word count. So make sure that you do stick within the 12 to 1500 words. It has to be literary and analytical, shouldn't be descriptive and dealing with the characters as real people or talking about those sort of sociological issues, but rather analyze what the writer has done. And you might find that a useful way to do that is to focus your research question by saying, how does the author do X? How does Siskin employ contrasting olfactory and visual imagery to convey the whatever the effect might be in perfume? Or how does Lorca use imagery related to the land to convey the rural setting of 1930s Spain or something? So that you really employ the writer, or look at how the writer employs certain features to get his effect across. So the last part we want to look at in the essay is the works cited, which is the bibliography on the end, which just needs to be a correctly formatted alphabetical list of any text that you've cited in the work. It's up to you to choose the style guide. I know here at our school, APA tends to be the favored model, but if you want to use MLA or Harvard or any other form of referencing, that's fine, as long as you are consistent throughout your work. It should include the primary text, so the core text that you're writing your essay on, excuse me, including the name of the translator. So make sure that you cite that correctly. It's not required for you to have secondary text for your written assignment, so that's fine if you don't. But if you do, then obviously they need to appear in your cited list of bibliography as well. Moving on to the editing. It's really important that you do try to make this a polished piece, so that I'm not spending my time saying that your spelling is poor or you need to check X, Y, and Z in terms of punctuation. So really work together, right? Read each other's work. I can only look at one draft, but there's nothing limiting you from looking at each other's. On top of that, a good way to kind of check for yourself is to read your work out loud, because you tend to hear, ooh, that sounds awful, when you hear it read out. You might even read it, record it on your phone, and then play it back to yourself, and you realize that things sound bizarre or need to be fixed up. When it comes to actually checking spelling and word choices, you might read the essay backwards, so start at the very end and go backwards, because then you're not reading words in context, and you'll make sure that your spelling is correct. So just to be clear on the deadline for this, it'll be the first lesson after the Christmas break. Obviously, without the new timetable yet finalized, I can't give you an exact date, but the first English lesson after Christmas break, which will be the week after Australia Day. And you are to submit the essay as a PDF with all these 4 components in it, so cover page, reflection statement, the essay itself, and the bibliography in one PDF file. Upload that through Turnitin, and I'll give you feedback on that version. As I mentioned previously, you won't be getting written feedback on your essay, but rather we'll have a 15-minute meeting booked in that following week or maybe 2 weeks after you submit your essay, where we sit down and talk about the strengths and weaknesses of your assignment and what you can still improve. You'll then have the remainder of Term 1 and a couple of weeks of Term 2 to refine your essay, so the Easter holidays as well if you need them. And the final submission will be May 16th next year, or the week of May 16th, whenever our lesson is in that week. I will give you one more lesson straight after the IOC to peer edit, so I'll give you kind of a checklist, and you can have that lesson to peer edit each other's essays, read through, make sure that the final essay is one that you are proud of. Hopefully that's all the assistance you will need to deliver an excellent essay when we finally come back in January. I have seen some really interesting topics proposed from you, so I do anticipate some excellent essays when we come back. So best of luck, and we'll see you all after Christmas in class again.